welcome to this site here of the Herodian Fortress and also the Bethlehem area. We have something really special for you. We're going to be climbing up to the top of the Herodian, talking all about that, but from the top of the Herodian, you can see everything so beautifully. You can see where the shepherds' fields were. You can see where the Church of the Nativity is. And then going back in the Old Testament, you can see where Boaz's fields were, where Ruth would have gleaned. Then, of course, then David was born here in Bethlehem, and then he would be a shepherd here. He knew this area very well, David did. In fact, right down over here, we'll be looking at it. See that canyon down there? Even though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, possibility that that's what he had in mind when he wrote some of the Psalms. We know also that in the time of Jesus, that Jesus was born here, obviously. We have the shepherds, we have the birth of Christ here, and of course we have Herod the Great, who's going to kill the babies 2 years and younger right here as possible from right here at this fortress that command was given. So we're going to go inside here. We're going to see a model of the Herodian. We're going to go up on top. We're going to see all the sights up there. We're going to be talking about Herod and this Herodian and who Herod was. And we're going to be talking about the contrast of two kingdoms. Herod chose to build his kingdom, and what we have of Herod's kingdom is ruins. That's all we have, and the legacy that he was a baby killer. So we really have two choices in life. We can build our kingdom, which will dissolve and be nothing, or we can be a part of building God's kingdom, which is eternal. So I think you're going to find this time here very, very meaningful. So are you ready to explore this site? All right, so what we have is the Herodian. Once again, this mountain partially existed. It did have a rise, but Herod got dirt from around the area and he built it all the way up. So he made this supernatural volcano type thing with a flat part up on the top. And so up on the top then was his fortress. He had several towers up there. That was the main tower there. This is where he was buried. He died in Jericho of a very gruesome death. It's recorded that it was possibly maybe gangrene of his intestines. It was extremely painful for him. And when he died, because no one really liked King Herod, he wanted there to be weeping and mourning in Jerusalem and in the area, so he had a whole bunch of priests killed, so that there would be sadness, not necessarily for him, but just sadness. He was a master builder, great builder, but a terrible person. He killed one of his wives, he killed 2 of his sons. He was always afraid that someone was going to take over his kingdom. And that's why when Jesus was born and the Magi came, and that was a massive event, the Magi coming, because it wasn't just 3 Magi, 3 kings on 3 donkeys that you see. This was a massive caravan. They were very, very wealthy. There were probably hundreds of people, bodyguards, because they were wealthy. So it was a massive caravan, and these were Magi who were very, very important people. And so when they arrive in Jerusalem, it says the whole city was not in an uproar, but they were just touched the whole city. And so then they say, where is this king of the Jews? And Herod says, what's this king? We'll say, we've seen his star from the east, we followed it. And so then Herod said, well, go and inquire and then let me know so that I can go and worship. It was all a lie. And so these Magi, they come over here. But anyway, Herod was a jealous king. And so when the word got out that this king of the Jews had been born, then he is going to kill all of the children in Bethlehem 2 years and younger. Tragic event. So anyway, so you had this man-made mountain and fortress up here, and this is where he would come if there was really any danger, or he would just come up here. This was one of his fortresses. He had a fortress at Masada that we saw. He had palaces in Jericho, Caesarea Maritime. He had a huge palace that we'll be seeing in Jerusalem, where we believe that Jesus was tried before Pilate. We'll be seeing that. So we have the big, huge mountain up above. We have a theater right here. And then down below, we had a small city. We had a huge swimming pool with colonnade around it where you could gather. There was buildings, there were shops, there were saunas. It was another small, like Roman city that was luxurious. So this was the Herodian Fortress area. And we'll go up on top, and once again, we'll be able to see all this stuff down below, and then we'll be able to see all around the area. Now, Rome controlled Israel during the time of Herod. The Romans appointed Herod to rule Israel on their behalf. He reigned from 37 to 4 BC and was the king in power when Christ was born. He was the Herod who killed all the male children 2 years and younger in the area around Bethlehem in his attempt to kill Christ. Okay, so now go ahead and follow me, and we're going to head out this way here. I want you to look over to your left over here. We'll look at it as we get up above it, but you can see all of the round, huge rocks. Okay, those were like cannonballs. They could roll them down. So once again, this was a very fortified, protected fortress of Herod the Great. What we're going to see on this side is going to be both Old Testament and New Testament events. Other side of the fortress, looking south, is going to be more from the Old Testament. So can you see Bethlehem? Let's get Bethlehem. Okay, let's start off with the pools down here. You see the pools here? You see the center fountain. Yeah. Okay, let's let that corner beyond the fountain be our pointer, okay? So there you see the corner. If you go straight up, then you see those 3 large buildings on the first hill. And then if you go to the skyline, up above those, that's ancient Bethlehem. That's where we will be going to the Church of the Nativity next. All right? So then down below the Bethlehem, we kind of have this mountain in between, but that's where the shepherds' fields would be, out in that area. Now, why is that the case? Well, because the shepherds, they would roam all these fields down here, and so in the evening, rather than have each shepherd take his sheep to his house, they would have a community area. So you'd have multiple shepherds that would gather together, and then they would have different corrals for their sheep. The sheep would know their shepherd, so when the angels appeared to these shepherds, they were all there, and so there was a whole bunch of shepherds there. So anyway, they would have a community corral system. That's why you would have a lot of shepherds. And so then they would go up to ancient Bethlehem, and then that's where they would see Jesus. Okay, well, let's go ahead and walk around the tell. We're going to go to the other side over here. One of the reasons why we like coming to the Herodian, not only to talk about Herod and the contrast of two kingdoms, but it's a great place to see a bird's eye view of a lot of the Jerusalem, Bethlehem area up here. All right, so now on this side we have just this gorgeous view. What do you notice a little bit different from this side over here when you look down? Okay, you see more pastures type, right? So it's flatter, and then you can even see where even to this day, I can see some wheat fields. Okay, now the barley harvest is already passed because the barley harvest happens in about April. We're in May, so the wheat is going to be harvested around June, maybe first part of July, right in there. So you can see some of the green fields down there. Of course, those would be wheat fields. Now we know that when Naomi and when they came back, and Ruth, and she would glean in the fields, right? So by looking at the geography of the land, then I would think that down here in this area would be the best candidate for Boaz, and where Ruth would then glean. So you're looking right at the same area where Ruth gleaned. She was a very hardworking woman, very admirable. In fact, when Boaz talked with her, he said, "All of my servants, they speak very, very well of you." She was a very noble, very godly woman and a hard worker. And of course, then she would provide for her mother-in-law, which was, we talked today about mother-in-laws, right? I mean, sometimes it can be a challenge, but Ruth was the ideal daughter-in-law. And she followed her mother-in-law, left her family. I mean, just think about that. Left her family to follow Naomi and the Jewish faith. If you look over to your right, you see this ravine going down, this deep ravine going down. Could it be that when David wrote Psalm 23, that he was thinking about that? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. So you're looking at the area in which David grew up. The Bethlehem is also called the city of David. So we're going to be going to where one of his upper towers, the main tower, would have been, but it was much higher than this. Now you can look right down over the Herodian. Wow. And again, this tower would have been a lot higher than this, much higher. So again, you have a commanding view of the area. And this Herodium, back in the time of Herod, was a just monument that just overshadowed all of Bethlehem. Everyone in the surrounding area, it was like the Herodium is the magnificent fortress, just yelled out glory and power. Pretty amazing, huh? Pretty amazing. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're dropping down inside this Herodian Fortress. Once again, you can see this massive tower. There was a number of different towers, but you have this massive tower right here. Then we have a bathhouse that Herod had up here. And then later, after Herod died, then the Jews would take over up here, and they had a synagogue over here. In fact, over to your right, we'll step over here, and you can see a synagogue that is here. Then there was an underground passage that went down lower, where we'll be going in a moment. We'll just be looking at some of this stuff. Some of the things that we're going to see up here are from after the time of Herod. Herod didn't have the synagogue up here, and he didn't have a mikveh and stuff like that up here. This was later than when the Jews would take it, and in fact, they would have it when the Bar Kokhba revolt happened. Remember that time period? This is about 132 AD. Then the Jews are going to rise up again, and they're going to try to take back their country. And so they did take back some of it. And so then you can see that there's some of these weapons here and the synagogue, they're going to be from this time of the Bar Kokhba. So this is going to be in about 132 or so AD. So this is 50 years after the time of the destruction of the temple, and roughly 100 years after the time of Christ is when the Bar Kokhba revolt took over. We can also see remains of churches and monasteries from the Byzantine period dating from 350 to 650 AD. Evidence of these can be found from the two apses on the north and south ends and the columns in the middle. Okay, so we have a mikveh here, and then we have over in that area over there, we can see a sign here where we have a bathhouse that Herod had. Herod lived in luxury. Lived in luxury. There was nothing that Herod ever lacked. Nothing that he lacked. He had everything he wanted. So what we're going to do now is we're going to walk down through this tunnel system. We're going to wind up here where we're going to be able to see then Herod's tomb where he was buried, brought from Jericho to here buried, and then this theater that he had up here. Of course, then he would have down below, as we've looked at, we saw the Roman small city down below with the big pool and everything. So this was just, once again, everywhere Herod went, he had everything you would want, whether it be Masada, whether it be here, whether it be Caesarea Maritime, whether it be the palace in Jerusalem that he had, he lacked nothing. Here we go. So what do we have here? Pretty impressive, unbelievable. So we're going to have some massive cisterns here. We had a lot of water storage. Step over here and look at the cisterns. Huge cisterns, and then what they would do is they would have the rock, but then they would plaster the walls of the cistern so that they wouldn't leak. You can see the steps coming down. The cistern level changed, and they could just come down to get water at the level where the water was at that point. So just once again, this was a massive cistern complex here. So once again, Herod lacked nothing. He had water up here for storage. So anyway, so we're going to continue down now. and we're not far from the exit. Okay, just want to point out here, while these fine folks are filing through here, is that this was a access to the top of the Herodian, but then the tunnel system was kind of secret, a special passage. Right over here by that pavilion over there is where Herod's tomb was discovered. And then over here was the theater that he had. And so all of the stones, everything you're seeing that Herod built, not only the dirt that he hauled in, but all of the stones, all the stones up above, everything was mined, limestone, and then brought here. So these massive projects that Herod built were just unbelievable. Thousands and thousands of workers would be involved in this. Well, here we are exploring this Herodian fortress that Herod the Great built, and we've talked about how Herod's footprint is all over this land. You're not going to see any person in the history of Israel that has a greater footprint as far as building than Herod. Now, obviously Solomon built a lot, but that was earlier. But maybe other than Solomon, Herod is going to be your other figure that builds. He's just building everywhere. And whatever Herod does is absolutely to perfection. To perfection. Huge, big. I mean, what he does is just off the charts in size more than anything else. It's just absolutely exquisite what he does. So what we're going to be talking about in this talk here is a contrast between two kingdoms. Herod focused on building his own kingdom. It was for his glory. It was for Herod's glory. And so what we see today as we walk this country, we see many ruins of Herod. We're going to use the frame Herodian stones a ton when we're in Jerusalem. We see everywhere. We were at Caesarea Maritime. Herod builds the largest seaport in the Roman Empire. He enlarges the Temple Mount. He builds Masada. He builds a palace in Jericho. He's this man that is just building over the caves of Machpelah. He's a builder. But unfortunately, it was for his glory. So today, as we see all this, what do we see of Herod's kingdom? We see ruins. You know, Herod thought he was going to live forever. He wanted to, in essence, put his footprint on history forever. What we see today are ruins, and what Herod is best known for is being the baby killer who killed many males 2 years and younger in the surrounding area. Herod doesn't have much respect. You talk to historians, the Jews at the time didn't respect him. Today, he's a master builder, but as far as building God's kingdom, it was a huge fail. So Herod's life was a fail. It was a fail because he built his own kingdom. So the challenge for us today is, whose kingdom are we going to build? We all have some of Herod within us. We all have some of Herod within us. And the pride, wanting to be recognized, the aspects of the world, things that we want to be known for, accomplishments, things of that nature. And those aren't necessarily wrong in and of themselves, but if they are our main focus and we're building we have selfish ambition and we're building our kingdom, then we will deeply regret that at some point in time, guaranteed. So I love coming to the Herodian here because it's a reminder for me, whose kingdom are you building, Todd? Are you building Christ's kingdom, or are you building your own kingdom? And that's the question that we really want to ask ourselves daily. Whose kingdom am I building? Whose glory am I seeking? Am I seeking my glory, my recognition, my prestige, or am I seeking God's, which is an eternal kingdom? So let's look at this contrast. So Christ's kingdom is very different than Herod's kingdom. When Christ came, he came lowly. We're going to go to the Church of the Nativity. It is the spot where Jesus was born. No dispute whatsoever. We're going to be in the very spot where Jesus was born. Very spot. He came lowly. He did not own anything. He did not hold a political position. He washed people's feet. And his kingdom, today, he has more followers, obviously, than Herod does. He's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So it says in Isaiah 9:6, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And the increase of his government and of the peace there will be no end. And on the throne of David and over his kingdom, he shall establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this." So Christ's kingdom, he is God in the flesh. Christ's kingdom is eternal. It's an eternal kingdom, never ending. Micah 5:2 says, "But you, O Bethlehem, Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel. From his coming forth is from the days of old, from ancient days." What we're seeing is Christ's kingdom is eternal because Christ's kingdom is Christ and he is God in the flesh. He is eternal. And of course, then John 8:58, Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." And they picked up stones to stone him. He says, "For what good work are you going to stone me?" They said, "We don't stone you for any good work, but you, being in the form of man, make yourself out to be God." So they had no question, no doubt what Jesus was doing. But Jesus said that before Abraham was, I am. That is the same words that God spoke to Moses. "Who shall I say is sending me?" Tell them that the great I am that I am is sending you. So we see that Jesus has an eternal kingdom. And it says in Revelation 22:12, "Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense or my reward with me, to repay each one for what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end." So unlike Herod, who only cared about building his own kingdom, Christ came as a lowly servant to serve others. Christ was born in a humble manger in a small frontier town of Bethlehem. He owned no home and had nowhere to lay his head. He held no public office. He rode into Jerusalem on a colt, the colt of a donkey, which was a lowly symbol of peace. He washed his disciples' feet. He died a criminal's death between two thieves. Unlike Herod, who glorified himself, Christ set aside his glory to glorify the Father. And he became obedient even to death. It says in Philippians 2:5, "Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, taking the form of a bondservant and being made in the likeness of men, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. For this reason, also God highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name which is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow, of those who are in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and that every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father." So unlike Herod, whose kingdom came to ruins, Christ changed people and the course of history like no other person. So a contrast between two kingdoms. Do we want to be a part of building Christ's eternal kingdom, or do we want to build our own kingdom? That's the choice we have in life. If we're wise, we're going to invest in building His kingdom. It's eternal. Not our kingdom, not our pleasure, not what we want. We are going to invest ourselves in His kingdom, building His kingdom. So we see all these ruins that Herod did for his glory. And so what does Herod have now? I would not want to change shoes with Herod. When Herod was here, everyone wanted to be Herod. Power, prestige, all the luxuries of life. He was in control, powerful. But now what does he have? Now Herod has been humbled. He's humbled before us. He's humbled before history. And right now in God's presence, he is humbled and will be so forever. We don't want to walk that route. We don't want to walk the route of building our own kingdom. We want to walk the route of building Christ's kingdom, investing our lives in Christ's kingdom. That's why these early followers of Christ, when they realized Christ's kingdom and how big and powerful it was, they were willing to give everything to it. That's why they were willing to take up their cross. We walked through Caesarea Maritime and the Hippodrome, where many Christians gave their lives. We were at Bethlehem. We could see the Hippodrome there. Many Christians gave their lives. The apostles, the disciples, all of them but John, the Apostle John, died a martyr's death. Why would they do that? Because they're willing to give everything to His kingdom. Because shortly, this life's going to be over. Bang, it's going to be over, and then we're going to step into God's kingdom. Either in righteousness, into heaven, or in hell. But we want to step into Christ's kingdom, and we want to step into it being rewarded. The Bible talks a lot about rewards. In the Sermon on the Mount, it's mentioned 9 times. 1 Corinthians 3. The Bible basically ends with, "Behold, I am coming quickly, and my recompense, my reward is with me." God is going to bless us. God is going to reward us for all that we do for Him. So we want to give our lives to building His kingdom. Fine-tune and hone those gifts and serve God and build His kingdom. In whatever we do, whether we have a secular job, whether we're retired, whatever we do, we want to give ourselves to the kingdom. And I will say this to those who are approaching retirement, is oftentimes when we get to retirement age, we step back and kind of retire from building God's kingdom. When you come into retirement age, what do you have? You have the most time, you have the most knowledge, you have the most experience, and use that for building God's kingdom. It's an eternal kingdom. It is worth your effort. It's an eternal kingdom. It will last forever, and you will be there forever in that kingdom, enjoying what you have done for Him. He's going to give us crowns. He's going to reward us, and they're going to be eternal rewards. So some faith lessons that we are talking about here are, whose kingdom are we building? It says in 1 John 2, 15 through 17, "Do not love the world or the things in the world." What's the world here referring to? The values, the goals, the ambitions. If anyone loves the world, and we're going to see what this is, if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in this world, listen carefully, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life. Pride of life. So we have this tension, we have this tendency within us because of our sinful nature, that we're going to want to build our kingdom. We want to have the biggest of everything. We want to have all this recognition, all this power, all this money, all this fame. But oftentimes the focus is upon us. Oftentimes we'll see in retirement ages, when they're young, they have a small house with a whole bunch of kids in it. Then they get to a certain age and there's just the two of them, and then what do they have? They have a huge house with empty. God bless those. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that we want to really be careful of what we're doing. What are we doing? Whose kingdom are we building? So how special to be here and to think about this. I'll finish with this. It says in Matthew 6:19, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So in closing, where is our treasure? Where is our treasure? Herod's treasure is right here. This was Herod's treasure. He left it. And what does he have now? How about us? Are we going to leave stuff like this? Or are we going to invest in his kingdom and build his kingdom? It's an eternal kingdom wherein we will enjoy the blessings and the rewards of that, of our labor here for eternity. It says in the end of 1 Corinthians 15:58, it says, therefore, always be abounding in the work of the Lord, for our labor in the Lord is not in vain. So let's build God's kingdom. Amen? Amen. Thank you, and may God richly bless you.